Greetings to all. On behalf of Earthkeeper and James Tyberonn, we warmly welcome each of you to Earthkeeper Crystal StarGate 2019 videos. The following wonderful video presentation was filmed live at the epic Earthkeeper Arklantis conference in September of 2018 in Sacred, Arkansas, the Crystal Vortex. In this remarkable video teaching, we highlight Dr. Gregory Little. Dr. Greg Little is a psychologist turned explorer and documentary maker. For the past 2 decades, Dr. Greg Little and his wife, Dr. Laura Little, have been actively searching the Bahamas for archaeological ruins that might be linked to Atlantis, working with the Edgar Cayce organization in its Search for Atlantis project. The Littles have conducted wide explorations around Bimini, Andros, and the Great Bahama Bank. Their explorations have been featured on the National Geographic Channel, the Learning Channel, MSNBC, Sci-Fi, Discovery, and the History Channel. Greg is co-author of the books, Edgar Cayce's Atlantis, Mound Builders, Ancient South America, and People of the Web, and has over 30 other books in print in various areas of psychology. His recent work includes the incredible Encyclopedia of Native American Mounds, Native American Cosmology, In the Path of Souls, and the Denison Origins, The Origin of Hybrid Humans, DNA and the Source of Human Giants in Ancient America. His fascinating, articulate, and academic presentation focuses on mysterious Americas, the source, origin and purpose. Drivo. Greg Little is a psychologist turned explorer, and the Earthkeeper's 2019 epic Arklantis 4-day event will be November 22nd through 25th in the beautiful crystalline Ozark Mountain Valley of Sacred, Arkansas, the Crystal Vortex. On behalf of Earthkeeper and James and Ann Tyberonn, we thank you. From our hearts, Namaste. Enjoy. Dr. Greg will begin immediately after the beautiful opening music. Stay tuned.
So good afternoon to everyone gathered for the final conference session, the final day of the conference session. And we welcome all those of you who are viewing from across the world on the internet. Our next speaker is Dr. Greg Little, and he's going to speak on ancient mysteries, who we are, why we are here. He's done some absolutely amazing research, and he works very closely with the ARE. And one thing about Greg and Laura is that they actually went on expeditions looking for the Hall of Record. They're going through, I lived in South America. I've been to 80 different countries. I worked on the banks of the Amazon River. And when I saw the places in Guatemala that they were going with crocodiles and jaguars in the jungle. I mean, they really showed tremendous courage to travel into these places to find the Hall of Records. And they are just amazing people. Academics, but down to earth, highly evolved souls who are donating their time and energies to the Edgar Cayce Association for Research and to find all of these past information clues from the Maya and from the ancient origins. And so Greg and Laura are people I deeply, deeply admire. And I ask you to give Dr. Greg Little a rousing, standing Earthkeeper ovation. Thank you, please.
Can you hear me? Okay, first I want to thank James Tyberonn and his wife Ann. It's just incredible what they do. Everybody knows that. And I do want to correct one thing you said, that we showed tremendous courage going to like Guatemala. Stupidity. Tremendous stupidity would be the correction. It was actually very dangerous. And Laura showed you a picture of us on the banks, on a little tent on the banks of the Sumasenta River. What she didn't show you were the crocodiles that were also on the banks of that same river. And that's the stupidity. And we went ahead and slept there, but there wasn't anywhere else to stay. I also want to give a shout out to all the volunteers here. I mean, unbelievable what they do. Tremendous amount of work. Okay. All right. There's several agendas I wanted to go to, but let me just go straight to this. So what this is about, what I want to present is something unusual. I have never presented this information before. I know Andrew Collins and Graham Hancock both mentioned that we've all done these books on what happened in the Americas in prehistory, and Andrew's book and mine, which is called Denisa Ben Dawn, we sent into the publisher about 2 months ago. It takes a year and a half for it to come out. Graham's is done. But since Andrew and I finished that book, I have continued to dig, not literally, I shouldn't say that, it's illegal to dig into mounds. I've continued to research things and found things that I just keep getting astonished. So this talk is about those things, and it is what the mound builders, not a tribe, we're not talking about a tribe now, we're talking about a culture, America's mound builders, what they really thought about what we are, where we came from, why are we here, and where do we go? Now, I've always known that Native Americans had some answers to this, but I wasn't able to parcel out what modern tribes might say and what the culture that is gone, long gone, would say. That is, the mound builders. They did have these answers, and when I saw them and realized them, I was pretty astonished. And come January, I'll have a book or a series of books, sort of self-help books, sort of self-coaching books, based on a lot of these ideas. It's kind of amazing to me. So let's start at a beginning. And it's basically 1492. Columbus gets here, and I discovered Americas. Of course, no Native Americans thought that they were discovered. In fact, they discovered these idiots that had accidentally found their way to the Americas. But what they found was an enormous population. And the numbers of the people that were in the Americas at the time of the discovery, 1492, the numbers keep increasing. When I was in college, we were told that somewhere, maybe 10 million or so were here. By the time I did the first Mound encyclopedia in 2009, the numbers had gone up to 56 million. So the accepted number right now, the minimum number of people that were in the Americas when Columbus got here, was 56 million. Since 2009 to the present, the numbers continue to increase, and now most archaeologists and anthropologists accept that there were probably well over 100 million people in the Americas then. Another thing you might not realize, and this is relevant, that vast areas that we see as forested and along rivers where it's all overgrown, those areas were absolutely devoid of vegetation except for crops. They used a type of technology that most of us would find ridiculous. They burned forests to the ground, which actually made the ground more fertile and brought in more animals. And that's relevant for what you'll see in a little while. Okay, one of the things that they found which astonished them, were pyramid formations. This is a mound called Monk's Mound in Cahokia, Illinois. Its base is about an acre larger than the Great Pyramid at Giza. It's as tall as a 10-story building, and from it you can see downtown St. Louis. Graham Hancock showed it yesterday. What you probably don't know is at the base of this massive mound is a stone structure about the size of a 3,000 square foot house, 2 stories tall. Never been dug into, we simply know it's there. It probably is a tomb, but we don't know. To the ancient alien people, it may be a UFO down there. I don't know. To tell you the size of this, in 1987, 8,000 people got on top of this. That's how big the top of this mound is. And it had a temple on the top, and they know the walls of the temple were 50 feet high. Now think of that, 5-story building. All right. So hundreds and hundreds of these complexes were found by Europeans. Almost none of them were occupied. I say almost because there were some that were occupied at the time. This site had 120 mounds. Today it's got, I think they have identified 85 or so that are still there. This is a reconstruction of a site that still exists in Mississippi. So you see here mounds built upon larger mounds. To give you an idea of the size of this, that mound is 30 feet high, this one. And it sits atop a mound that's about 34 feet high. And then you have all those others on the same structure. Lots of little platform mounds, and then most people's ideas of a mound is this, a conical burial mound. Most of these have a stone chamber at the base, very well made, no mortar. Some of them look just as good as any modern construction. They look a lot like some of the stone chambers in England. And there were probably 1 million of these. Farmers love to destroy these. And if you're a farmer, I'm not going to blame them, but these get in the way of irrigating. They also create problems if you're trying to make straight lines to plant things. So farmers have destroyed probably 500,000 of these. Then there are the earthworks. There are hundreds and hundreds of earthworks. Graham showed you this yesterday too. This is Newark, Ohio. It is the world's largest and most complex geometric earthworks. It is formed by, these are walls of earth. This, by the way, this illustration was made by the Ohio Historical Society by archaeological reconstruction artists. Notice there are no trees in this. And they know that they had it burned to the ground. They used different colors of sand on the interiors and on the floor. You will see what there is a flag, but they actually use these poles. Poles become important. This is an eclipse predictor. This is a circle enclosing 20 acres, an octagon that enclosed 50 acres. There are truncated pyramids at each corner of the octagon. And Graham talked yesterday about it. It charts the moon during its 18.61 year cycle. It allows you to accurately predict eclipses. And I can't recall when the one was where if you stood here and you looked straight through this gateway across these two mounds, there was an eclipse that occurred. I can't remember the year, but they believe that's probably what it was made for. There's a reason why eclipses were important. I don't really have, that's a whole talk in and of itself. It's a good time to perform rituals. And you may not know this, right directly under an eclipse, the moment that that umbra hits and you're in that dark space, gravity decreases. It's called the Elias effect. Elias was a Pulitzer Prize winner. Very strange. The U.S. Navy has been studying that for decades. They have no idea why gravity decreases during an eclipse, but only directly under it. So, standard story. I just want to take a minute to go through this. Supposedly, and this is the truth, the facts, the undisputed truth up until about the year 2000 or so, all of the people that came into the ancient Americas came from Siberian Asia across the Bering Straits or Beringia, the land bridge that was exposed during the last ice age. They came down an ice-free corridor into North America. They proceeded, the hordes of them proceeded to go everywhere and all the way down to Tierra del Fuego. And not only did they occupy everything, within about 1,500 years, they managed to kill off all of the mastodons, all of the woolly mammoths, and they managed to kill off everything else that was large and dangerous, saber-toothed tigers and so on. That was absolute fact in archaeology. You get archaeology textbooks before the year 2000, and again you see quotes like this. This is from one. This is from a textbook. We are confident in our knowledge of where man came from to the New World, and he was able to make the trip. American Indians came as its first inhabitants maybe 12 to 15,000 years ago, and they came through there. They were called the Clovis people. They were called Clovis because of these distinctive points. A fluted point, this is a good illustration of a fluted. These are flutes. There's one on each side of these points. Now, these are not small points. They're spear points. They're exceptionally thin. And for a long time, it was unknown why they even put these flutes on there. Now, most archaeologists believe they know the reason, but it's kind of irrelevant. National Geographic, this is from one of their publications. And you will see here, undisputed inhabitants, the earliest undisputed inhabitants of the Americas, the people known as Clovis, came through the ice-free corridor 12,000 years ago. So this is what we were taught as absolute proof. And the reason I thought so much at the beginning of this, I wasn't sure really what I wanted to talk about. Lots of scientists lie. They absolutely lie, and sometimes they lie to maintain their point of view. I almost hate doing this, but I'm going to, because it's the truth. Laura and I have been involved in the Bimini research for a long time. We never wanted to go to Bimini. we looked at Andros Island, but we found some stuff at Andros Island, and we said, oh, geez, we need to go to Bimini and have a look at that and make a comparison. So we did, and what we saw at Bimini wasn't anything like the scientific publications said it was. It's like they said, oh, it's only a single layer of stones. But no, we found up to 4 layers of stones at Bimini. We found lots of other things there. It didn't make any sense. So we actually went to a library because we couldn't get the original publications by the scientist that was the biggest skeptic of all. He was with the U.S. Geological Survey. And he kept claiming that, oh, all these stones are tilted a certain way, and it proves that it's all natural formation. And so Laura and I pulled his original study, which you cannot get, and we had to go in a library and copy it. And I actually contacted him and said, what you say in this original report is not what you're saying in all the other things. And he said, well, it probably did do what I've been saying. He said, yeah, I didn't find that, but it probably did. And I said, but that's a lie. And he said, oh, you're one of those. Well, I was told around 15 years ago that this guy and the U.S. Geological Survey formally produced fake artifacts, formally produced fake statues, stone artifacts, with the full knowledge of all the people there in this office in Florida, and took them to Bimini and put them all around the stones and under the stones at the Bimini Road. I was told that 15 years ago by an archaeologist, and I said, I don't believe that. I just don't believe it. And I'll never, ever say that, because you could get sued for it if it's not true, because that's defamation. I just didn't believe it. So about a year ago, there it is, and he's talking in front of this U.S. Geological Survey guy. He's also a professor at the University of South Florida, and the chairman of the geology department is there, and asked him, hey, I remember when you did all that, and we were all there when you did it. What came of it? Literally said, well, yeah, I sat there and I manufactured all that. This is in front of all of the students in the geology department, and he admitted it, thought it was great, and all of them thought it was great and a great joke. So, that is a good example, and I'm saying it because it's on film. He's admitted to doing it. I actually did contact the U.S. Geological Survey, and their answer is, oh, we don't really care, so what? So, that's the kind of things we face. All right, so back to this. This is the kind of thing we faced. Even after 1997, there are still archaeologists that say Clovis was first. There are many archaeologists that say all this new evidence somehow is wrong. It's being misinterpreted, it's being planted, or whatever. One piece of evidence that they had was the Clovis points themselves. There is an official database of every Clovis point recovered in the Americas. It has approximately 30,000 points in the database. These little black dots are all sites where they've been found. So here you got 1,933 places in the Americas. The furthest south you get is Panama. There's one that was found in Panama, and there's one in Venezuela, and only like 2 in all of Mexico. And notice, there's a whole bunch of Clovis points here, fewer and fewer out west, and even fewer up to the north. So archaeologists spent decades trying to find Clovis points in Siberia and Asia. So far, 0. They've never found a single one. So then they spent decades trying to find them in this ice-free corridor. And lo and behold, they did find a couple in the ice-free corridor, and they said, voila, we have proof. Because they came down through here, and along the way they dropped a few. Makes sense. Well, it does. In a way, it fits their theory. So last year, well, it's this year, a study just came out, and that's why this is here, and they did something that I suspect they did decades ago, but no one had the guts to publish. And that is, they took the dates of each of these sites. They know when the Clovis points were dropped. They know from the stratigraphy and all the other little things, that the artifacts and so on, that they would carbon date. So they know when these were dropped. The oldest ones, the earliest Clovis points, are those here. They get younger and younger, or more recent here. The most recent of all are those up here. And the article that came out this year said, well, this is by mainstream archaeologists. They said, well, what we know now is the Clovis people, when this ice-free corridor opened here, they decided to see what the heck's up there. And they went from here up that away. There's a bottom line to this. Everything leads us to South America, and it's good. We've had some interactions, emails with Graham over the past couple months, Andrew, is that about right? Past 2 months, maybe? Andrew's not talking. He's not listening. He's over there. He's just over there. Who knows what he's doing? But South America, everything now seems to be South America, South America. And I can tell you this, South America has sites as old as 300,000 years ago. There are loads of sites in South America that go back to 50,000 years ago. To South American archaeologists, they have PhDs, they have lots of experience. It's absolute fact that they have dozens of sites dating to 50,000 years ago. No North American archaeologists accept any of it. None. They say, your research is low quality, you are biased for your own culture, you want your own culture to be first. They just say that we don't believe anything you tell us. But it's absolutely, it's amazing that you even have to argue it. The evidence is overwhelming that South America was occupied long, long before North America. A few other facts about it. South America had mounds before they ever appeared in North America. Now, most of you know I really like American mounds. But North American mounds, the earliest mounds, date to roughly 4,500, 4,600 BC. South American mounds go back 10,400 years ago. And they've just started testing the ones in that region where they appear, and they know there's probably a lot older ones. South America had mounds long before they appeared here in North America. Secondly, pottery. Pottery is what indicates a civilization of some kind. The first known pottery in North America is around Savannah, Georgia. It dates to 4,900 years ago. It's the very first pottery known in all of North America. Well, South America had pottery 7,500 years ago. Pottery is found at all the sites in South America and Central America 3,000 years before it was found in North America. Again, South America's first. Obviously, South America has this incredible building technology. You won't find in American mounds, you won't find any American mounds where they are monstrous megalithic structures. There are some mounds made of stone. There were stone mounds. There were some large mounds that were covered in stone, had stone casings on them. All the casings were taken by the settlers for construction projects. But there's nothing in North America that even approaches the pyramids in the Yucatan or Mexico or even in South America. There are loads and loads of them in South America. So there's nothing like that in North America. South America has more diverse DNA. In North America, last time I talked about mitochondrial DNA, I told you there's 5 primary types in ancient Native Americans. They've done the same thing in South America. They've pulled lots and lots of skeletal remains, tested them for mitochondrial DNA, and the truth is there's about 24 different types of mitochondrial DNA that have been found in South American remains. So they had a much more diverse population that came from a lot of different places, including some places where they shouldn't have come from. Habitation is older, 300,000 to 50,000 years ago. Obviously, North Americans, the North American Indians, the mound builders, led a very different sort of life than those in South America. They had a different sort of philosophy of life. Edgar Cayce gave readings about America's mound builders, and he said that the mound builders in North America deliberately chose a simpler and more spiritual way of life. Simpler and more spiritual. And that's probably reflected in their simpler constructions of their mounds. So, the current truth, the real history of the Americas, we don't know. It's far more complex than any of us think. Here in the next year, you're going to see some of the first books that come out that probably have all this put together. But even whatever we write or have written, it's going to change rather dramatically over time. It has to. And they came from a lot of different places. One example, Graham mentioned it yesterday. Who's this? What's this guy look like? Come on, you know. Yeah, it looks like an Australian Aborigine. He's not. He's a tribal member of one of those tribes in Brazil that has Australian Aborigine DNA. This picture's from 1946. They knew it then. But, of course, conveniently ignored it. And he does. There's a bunch. I have several pictures of that tribe in Brazil. And they do. They all look like Australian Aborigines. And that's just looks. But now we know DNA. They're matches. They're identical. All right. So let's forget about South America. I was just kind of building up to the mound builder beliefs. Use a double entendre there. Normally, this is a different kind of talk because normally I would cite references and sources and give all the evidence and try and build to a conclusion. I don't have time to do that. I need to just tell you what they believed, and that's what I'm going to do. But all this evidence comes from after the 1990s. In 1989 and 1990, the federal government passed laws that changed American archaeology. American archaeologists can no longer dig into mounds without a permit and permission from Native Americans, and there can't be any burials in it. If there are, they can't do it. They can't study any burial artifacts. They can't study any skeletal remains. It all has to immediately be returned to the tribe. So basically it says, well, you can't do any more excavations. So what the heck do we need archaeologists for then? So they needed something to do other than teach a science that's dead everywhere. So they decided, well, we need to go back and have a look at all of these old books and all these old reports that we've been ignoring for hundreds of years. These are books that were published by the U.S. government and some others by ethnographers, early anthropologists, and so on, where they went into the Native American tribes, collected as many artifacts as they could, and tried to get stories. They got access to secret societies, basically. But American archaeologists ignored all that up until the 1990s. Instead, they created their own history by doing digs and finding Clovis points and constantly reaffirming their false beliefs. So in 1990, it changed. A core of about 100 of them started meeting regularly to try and unravel some secrets about the mound builders. To tell you about, to get to the secrets, I got to tell you there's two types of myths here. One are called commonplace myths. These are the ones that you're familiar with. There are Native American stories about snakes and about birds and about the fox, and stories about creatures that will come and maybe trick you, the trickster. Loads and loads of stories. Those are called children's stories. Those stories were made to instruct the populace on traits, morals, characteristics. They used stories about animals to teach children about certain characteristics and skills that animals had that they were trying to teach to their children. But there was also a core of beliefs that were called sacred stories. And the sacred stories were only known by the elite. The elite were sometimes the rulers, the chiefs, also the medicine men and women, the shaman, which were both male and female, and there was a priestly class. And what this information was told us their origin of us, our purpose, the destination, and what this is all about. That's the information that I want to discuss and really just tell you. So they actually have a story that is so close to the Big Bang, I'm calling it the Big Bang. There was a beginning. It's so similar to modern physics, it's amazing to me. What they tell us is that before the physical universe came into being, there was a spiritual energy. They call it spirit, and eventually they were derided for this term, and they said, oh, you're animistic. You believe that everything's alive. They believe everything has spirit. Everything has a spiritual energy. But this spirit was a primordial type of energy, and it began to churn. It churned. It turned over on itself, over and over. It had a type of consciousness that defies our understanding. And when you read some of these sacred beliefs, they won't even talk about it. They say, yeah, it had consciousness, but there's no use talking about it. We can't possibly understand it. And this was an animation, but it's not going to run here. So I'll just skip by it. What this primordial churning did, turned over on itself, and we'll talk about what it was in a minute. It split itself into two. And when it split itself into two, it created a three-part universe. The churning was like a yin and a yang, two forces that seemed in opposition. One of the forces, I use their term, is creation. The other force, because there's no term that I can give you other than, you can think of it as good and evil, but it's not really evil. What it is entropy. If you know about the concept of entropy, it's a physics concept, and it's from the moment anything is created, it starts breaking down. Everything is subject to entropy. Relationships are subject to entropy. Physical structures, everything. From the moment of creation, it starts breaking down, and eventually it crumbles and breaks down into whatever its primary essence is, and then creation takes over. So those are the two forces. That's the churning. That's the yin and the yang. You have creation in an upper world, and you have entropy in a lower world. Entropy is not really evil. It's destroying things, but entropy allows creation to take place. So those are the two powers. So it split, and when it did, it created the physical universe. And this is an example of the Native American cosmos, the Mound Builders' cosmos. And it says here, a spherical universe, three parts. There's an upper world, a lower world, which is symbolized by a water line, and then the middle world, physical earth. The deepest secret that they have about this is what the physical universe or the middle world is about. And this leads to our purpose. The middle world is a double reflection. We are reflecting, this middle world was created to reflect the powers of creation and to reflect the powers of entropy. All right? We are a mirror. We are mirroring what goes on. All of the objects and life on earth are reflections of the competing spiritual forces. Why then would we be here? Can anybody think what that would mean? Why would we be here then? We play some role in this. We're playing a role in these two forces. Note, too, this striped pole. There is a pull that connects these three parts of the universe together. It is a physical pull. It has stripes on it for a reason. It looks sort of like a candy cane. Virtually all Native American tribes use this. This striped pull is always pointed to the north. It's always pointed to the celestial north. Shaman use this striped pull. The striped pull, to use a term that Carl Jung used, is a psychoid pull. Psychoid. It's a term very few people are familiar with. A psychoid factor is something that is not normally physically real, but under certain conditions it can transmute itself into physicality through vibration. So it's a vibrational tool. By vibrating that pull, a shaman or a medicine man or medicine woman or even you vibrate the pull, you can use it like an elevator so that your consciousness can commune with the forces in the upper world or commune with the forces in the lower world. Likewise, if you do this in certain places like geometric earthworks or mound complexes, and you do it at the right time and you have it all arranged the right way, and you shake that pull or you vibrate it the right way, you can have the powers of the upper world physically manifest, transmute themselves into reality, and literally appear in that sacred space. The Cheyenne Massam ceremony, they swear that that's what happens. If those of you that, how many of you bought the book People of the Web last year? I think 50 copies sold here, one or two people. Tell the story about Lou White Eagle, the arrow priest of the Cheyenne. He died a month ago. Lou died about a month ago. But he was in some of those ceremonies, and his grandfather, Edward Red Hat, held a lot of those ceremonies. But they say it really occurred. I have never seen the physical manifestation, but they claim in the right time, in the right place, it occurs. This movement of the pull is always from the south to the north, and to me it's identical. This is me. The Native Americans wouldn't tell you this, but to me it's identical to Earth's magnetic field. How you have the north magnetic pull in the south, and all these magnetic fields, the energy moves from the north to the south, around and around and around. Everything goes to the north. This is another depiction of it in color. This was done by an actual shaman. And it gives us the elements of the three-part universe and a few of the powers in the upper and lower world. So we've pulled it apart here. It's like a glass container we've pulled apart, the upper world. Now, you will hear some of the tribes will talk about a world tree, and some of them will talk about that it's a cedar tree. If you even look at this cedar tree, notice the striped pull is inside of it. You can see the striped pull. And it has certain, that's a raccoon there. I don't even have that picture to show you. This upper world, the main power in the upper world is the sun. And if you've seen this, you're probably going, no, that's not right. Somewhere along the line, I don't know where it was, in historic times, the idea that the sun is male, the sun is a man, or the sun is male, came out. But to the ancient Native American mound builders, the sun was a female deity. And I know that's different from what almost everybody has heard, but somewhere along the line it changed. I actually believe a lot of these beliefs changed to conceal the truth from the populace. They wanted to conceal a lot of these truths. The moon, actually this will make sense, the moon was either the brother or the wife of the sun, and the moon was considered, like most men, not just capable of appearing in the upper world, which is when the sun is there, but the moon could also appear at night when the lower world rotates into the sky. It's kind of like, your husband is real good in the daytime and so on, but at night he goes to a bar and God knows what he does there. Yeah. All right, so in the sky, in this upper world, you have a feathered serpent. Just bottom line, feathered serpent is the constellation of Scorpius. It's not the South American Quetzalcoatl. It's not that. It is the constellation of Scorpius. This feathered serpent always has a giant red eye. That is the star Antares. It is the ruler of the underworld. It only comes out a few months each year, hovers on the southern horizon, and then it goes into the underworld. Is not seen most of the year. When it goes to the underworld, it drops its wings, and it becomes a water panther or a snake. Then you have thunderbirds. I'm not going to take the time to talk about them. There is this great eagle in the sky, the great eagle. The chief often dressed like the great eagle during one of the ceremonies we're going to get to in a minute. The great eagle was a judge. And I'll see this. There's the hand Graham talked about. This is the Milky Way going around. The Milky Way comes up here. That is the judge. That's the great eagle. And notice here you have all the skulls and so on of the dead being judged by the great eagle. He normally carried, well, I'll show you some other images of him. This great eagle, or judge, sometimes they called buffalo robe woman. There were some other modern tribes would use that term, and modern tribes have changed all this. If you read these, like I said, the commonplace myths, they might call her buffalo-robed woman or an old man, but the old beliefs are that it was a great eagle, a judge. The judge was the Cygnus constellation. Over here you have Orion. Orion was formed, it was a hand in the sky. The three belt stars of Orion were the severed wrist. There's a story about a chief who tried to block the hole, put his hand up, and they severed his hand and hung it in the sky as a warning. That's their story anyway. So you have all these powers in the middle world. Here again is the tree and the pole, which become important too. Let's talk about the middle world very quickly. Let me see what kind of 157. Very good. They believed everything was composed of spirit, which is sometimes called animism. Animals are spiritual beings. Plants had spiritual energy. They didn't kill animals for sport. That was wrong. They didn't destroy plants just for any reason at all. Everything that they killed, everything they consumed, they prayed to its spirit, to return it to its spiritual essence. Soil is the most primordial spirit of all. Dirt, very primordial. Mounds are made of dirt. Geometric earthworks are made of dirt. Ultimately, that's what we return to. We return to this primordial essence. Rocks are condensed and solidified spiritual energy. That's why they liked carving things into rocks. Crystals, I'm going to come back to this when I get to the bottom, but crystals are the most pure, most condensed form of spiritual energy that exists in this belief system. If you want to have fun with crystals, do what the shaman used to do. I'm not going to tell you, I'll tell you this first one, but the other one I'll tell you can do at home, in the privacy of your own bathroom. So, if you take a leather pouch and you have some old quartz crystals, break them up, and you grind them. You grind it through the leather pouch. That's one of the things the shaman and the medicine men and medicine women used to do. And what you do, if it's in total darkness, you will see these little balls of light shooting out of it. It's very impressive. Now, if you believe in the concept of subtle energies, which I do, and there's a whole lot of psychologists and neurologists that believe in subtle energies. These are very, almost indetectable energies that affect brain chemistry and brain processes. You will understand that every one of those little balls of light has its own electromagnetic field. If you really want to impress yourself, get the two biggest crystals you can get. Don't use those really expensive ones that he has out there. Get the roughest crystals you can get, 2 of them. Get a really good pair of leather gloves that you're willing to get wet. Get all your friends together, go into your bathroom, do this at night, fill the bathtub with water about 2/3 of the way through, turn off all the lights, get it as dark as possible, put your hands down with those crystals, make sure you wear gloves, and rub those together as hard as you can in the water, as hard as you can. If you have big enough crystals and you rub them hard enough, you will light up your room. It will literally light it up. The reason you do it underwater is refraction. It refracts that light, man. Now, you can do it anywhere. If you really want to impress yourself later, get yourself a good camera that has capability of filming in zero light and set it up and film it and then put it in slow motion and watch it with your friends. You will be amazed at what you see. There is real energy in crystals. I used to be a skeptic in this. I was glad to hear James say that he was once a skeptic in some of this, but I was a skeptic. I am not anymore. I'll get back to that when I get to the bottom. Well, no, let me finish it. Okay. Yeah, I better do it. Better do this. What time do I finish? Am I supposed to be done here at 2 what? Anybody know? When? 2:45. Great. Okay. So, in Atlantis, I've written books about Atlantis, and Edgar Cayce's Atlantis. And I'm one of those, I can write books about things that I even think are preposterous. I can write about it and put out all the information, and I'm okay with that. I mean, I just report what's there. It doesn't mean I believe in it or any of that. And so I know about all this stuff about Atlantis and Cayce saying they had, these flying machines and so on. And actually, they probably did have the flying machines. They were in South America, by the way. That's another story. But one of the things in Cayce's story is about the flying machines using crystals and light to communicate. All right? Not just communicate with the spiritual world out there or whatever the angels are, the angelic sphere, but with actually communicate from one ship to another. Now, it's going to sound weird. All right, I'm going to talk about my dad. My dad is 92 years old, about to be 93. About 3 years ago, my wife and I just took control of his stuff and him. He's very happy. We moved him into a senior center. I've taken control of all of his medical stuff. He's a veteran from World War II. He never spoke about it. Never spoke about the work he did when we moved to Huntsville, Alabama, when I was in I guess 6th grade. Right after Kennedy was killed, we moved there. But my dad never talked about any of it. So on his 90th birthday, we have this special deal, and I go through his records, and I see, okay, he has a commendation from Admiral Nimitz, and then he never told me about that, and then I say, okay, he got a Bronze Star in World War II. He was in the South Pacific flying in PBYs. Never said, what about it? Nah, nothing. No, I just don't talk about it. Bronze Star is a fairly big deal. But anyway, so something happens with age when you get up there, and he started talking. And so I've asked him, my wife and I went to Huntsville and looked at some of the Apollo capsules. Now, you may not know what Huntsville, Alabama is. Huntsville had Redstone Arsenal. NASA is based in Houston. The rockets were actually shot off in Cape Canaveral, Cape Kennedy, as it was named for a while. But all the rockets were built in Huntsville, Alabama at Redstone Arsenal, where Wernher von Braun was. Kennedy was killed. My family moved to Huntsville, Alabama. I had no idea what my dad was doing except he was working at Redstone Arsenal. He's never, ever talked about it. So finally I asked, well, what the heck did you do there in these capsules? I knew he was doing something. He said, I was working on the communication system. Now, what? Wiring. He was an electrical engineer. And my wife and I went and saw some of the wiring in the Apollo capsules, and it's like a tube this big. It must have 500 wires because they had backups to the backups to the backups to the backups, everything. So in the course of this, I said, would you ever meet von Braun? And he said, yeah, I met him one time. He said, we were working late, and I went to the submarine sandwich shop on there, and he said, I ordered a sub, and then von Braun was right behind me. I didn't even know it, and he ordered the same sub. So he said, sit down with me. And he said, he talked the whole time. So what'd he say? And he said, I don't know, I didn't understand a word of it. That's true. So that led to I said, well, did you ever go to Cape Canaveral? Because I didn't think he ever did. And he said, yeah, once. For what? And he said, well, we had to align those crystals on the capsule and from the ground. And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, well, he said it was a final backup system. He said, we had these quartz crystals made into prisms, and we were shooting this beam of light through them. And I said, more. I need to know, what were you doing? Well, here's the deal. He said, we had to align this up. We had to be able to shoot it straight we were testing it for 5 miles. And he said they couldn't get it right, so they had me come and do this. And so here, bottom line, he said, well, what we were doing, the final backup was if everything failed, if all the electronics got zapped and everything failed, what we had was this. There was a quartz crystal that was formed into a prism, and the way that he said it is we shot a beam of light through it. And he said if the capsule was sitting on the moon, the beam of light would hit it, and it would hit that quartz crystal on the capsule, and that's how we were going to communicate as a final backup. Never heard it. Never. I've never heard anything like that before. So, let's get back to thousands of years ago. All right, so fire is a form of energy release. And fire is a way to take your body and put it back to its primordial substance. That is, cremation. So fire is actually a good thing. Remember, it's like entropy. You've got these two forces, entropy, creation. And they both kind of complement each other. And water is a type of flowing spiritual energy. It's a flowing spiritual energy. So you have places on earth where water and rocks and earth converge into specific formations, and they are portals. They are earth forms that create portals where spiritual energies can be communed with or manifested. And they found a way to create sites, specific types of geometric forms to confine the energy from time to time. Whoops. Like this. To confine the energy, do your rituals on the inside, and that way you're not spilling this spiritual energy, which you wouldn't necessarily want to spill out a lot of entropy, would you? You wouldn't want to destroy your surroundings, so you would do these rituals inside of a container of sorts. All right, back to this. Why are we here? The physical world is a place where creation and entropy manifest, and this is where they are kept in balance. That's why the whole thing split to begin with. In order for entropy and creation to be in balance, they had to split. They had to be kept apart. We live in a chaotic world. The chaotic world is caused by the churning of these two forces, constantly in conflict. They're turning over each other and they're churning constantly. We are special creations. We came from the stars. They all agree with that. We came not necessarily on spaceships, but we are spiritual entities that came from the stars. And this is just flat out what they say. We are here because we are the only creatures that appreciate and comprehend those two competing sides. We're the only ones. Nothing else seemingly can comprehend these two competing sides of entropy and creation. And our purpose here is to mediate those two forces. And how we do that is through the conducting and performance of rituals and ceremonies that renew these cycles of balance. And it was a necessity, something we absolutely had to do. And we use the predictable cycles of nature to maintain the balance. As you all know, we have equinoxes and solstices. There's a harvest season, there's a planting season, and on it goes. And so to maintain the balance, to maintain the balance, you had to honor the spiritual forces through those rituals. How these rituals are done and how well you live your life in accordance with this knowledge determines your fate, the fate of your family, the fate of your tribe, and your descendants. And supposedly, some of them said, it affected your ancestors who were living in the other world. Which if I get to a point to where you can ask questions, you can ask some questions about the other world. I don't have that here. That's like what you might call heaven or happy hunting ground. Don't laugh. That's what a lot of them really call it. All right. So members of the priestly class, there were specific people that handled specific rituals. The ones that did the rituals of the dead were not necessarily the same ones that did the rituals at the time of harvest. And to my knowledge, there was only one group that ever got to see the rituals of the dead. Lots of old ethnographers were allowed to see the rituals of the harvest, marriage rituals, things like that. But I only know of one story where they got to see the real death rituals. So they made land shaped into mounds, geometric earthworks, and rock formations. And they were places where manifestations of the spiritual world could occur here in the middle world. Again, that one. It's hard. I've talked to Andrew about this many times. It's very difficult for people today to understand this ancient mindset. A couple reasons. One is we do not live in a dark world. The night sky they see was dark. We don't see a night sky, not a dark sky. Almost nowhere on Earth can you see the Milky Way the same way they did it. It is stunning. I've only seen it once in my life, and it still was slightly affected. And I saw it on a research ship in the ocean that had no lights whatsoever, and we were about 100 miles from anything, and it was incredible. But I knew that there were lights that were still kind of blocking it out. But they saw it night after night after night, and they witnessed the same movements over and over and over. But the other thing is this. We live in an electromagnetic energy cesspool. In this room right now, there are wires and there's electricity going all over the place. And we have AC current here, so it's going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. So you have these electric fields reversing instantly and in all different directions. There's electromagnetic waves everywhere. There are TV stations and radio stations blasting electronic waves on us all the time. Cell phones that are on. You know, every cell phone call made in the United States, somebody in California dialing somebody else in California, that signal's coming out here till it's answered. You know that, right? No, you probably didn't. How else would it find where you are? It pings everywhere. Every cell phone is doing that to us. So it's an electromagnetic cesspool that we're in. Energy's everywhere. The other thing is this. When's the last time you slept on dirt outside? You don't remember, probably. When's the last time you actually touched dirt outside? Well, you probably have, but keep this in mind. We're in an insulated building here. We're surrounded by concrete, and there's concrete below us and on the sides of us. In your automobile, you even go out of your way to make sure you walk on a sidewalk to get in your automobile. They didn't have any of that. They slept on ground. The earth has a resonance, all very scientific. It sounds crazy to some people, but they were in tune with the resonance and the vibration that the earth had. We're not. It's very difficult for us to get in tune with whatever the earth energies are. And it's so difficult that to skeptics it sounds crazy. Most skeptics would say, Greg, your belief in this, it's crazy. You're out there on a limb, you're one of those weirdos and so on. I know it exists, but I can't prove it to them. Can't be done. So they lived in a very different world that we really, it's almost impossible for us to understand it and appreciate it. So that EM cesspool, I don't know how, it takes a great effort for us to really get connected to those energies. And I heard yesterday something I'd never heard before about how to attune yourself and protection. I'm actually going to do that. Mainly, yeah, keep my wife away. Yeah. All right, anyway. Well, you've heard this before. The Milky Way was a path of souls. They saw the Milky Way, the stars on the Milky Way were moving toward the north. They were souls making the journey. They were going from the south to the north. That's the way it was. That's the way it was in all ancient cultures. That's what the mound builders believed. The earthen forms, the mounds, the earthworks were magic machines designed to send souls to the stars. Now, they did other things, because remember I said they had other ceremonies there. I don't want you to think that all of the mounds were used just for this. But all of the sites did have this ritual, because people die everywhere. And they had this belief system everywhere. Basic concepts in it, real simple. In the night sky is a hand. There's the hand. It is Orion, the constellation of Orion. The little dot here, the eye in it, it's not an eye, it's an ogee, O-G-E-E. An ogee is a slit in the sky, that's what they called it. And this is the Milky Way. There is the feathered serpent again, Scorpius. Scorpius could not be visible. It was the ruler of the underworld. So you had to do the death ritual at a time Scorpius wasn't in the sky. The reason is, if Scorpius saw your soul wandering around on earth, it would snatch it and take it to the underworld. So you had to have Scorpius below. And up here is the Cygnus constellation, which is also known as the Northern Cross. Cygnus is represented by this fellow. The chiefs would dress. This is an actual, well, it's a painting and a drawing of an actual copper artifact from Etowah, Georgia, that was pulled out. But it's the chief showing his power over life and death. See the skull down, or the head down here? He's got a ceremonial mace with a cross on it that was found repeatedly, and is showing the power of life and death. So he is serving as the judge there. Those are the key elements in it. There were priests that kept the soul. It was called the keeping of the soul. We have two souls according to them. One soul is called the life soul. This is the life soul. The life soul is animated. It's the physical body which is animated by the spirit, primordial spirit that's in everything. So the life soul is the animated part of the body. But we have what's called a free soul too, very similar to Egyptian stuff. In fact, it's downright identical to Egyptian beliefs. The free soul has personality, individuality, it has memories, and it changes based upon your experience. So when you die, they tried to return your life soul to the ground, which that's the life soul. It's a wide-eyed skull. That's the way all these ancient artifacts show it. It's a wide-eyed skull or a single bone showing the physicality. And you see these kind of artifacts. This was at Moundville, Alabama. It's still there. These kinds of artifacts were actually used in the death ceremony, which they didn't know until around the middle 2000s. That's what they were. This is the free soul escaping the life soul. The free soul leaving the physical body. So the free soul is what took the journey of the path of souls. The keeping of the soul was the preparation. And the free soul had to be released in a ritual and sent to the sky. So they used these magic machines of earth. We know this was done for about 5,000 years. And when I say that, I'm not saying it was only done for 5,000 years. That's what we know for certain. This is now so accepted in American archaeology that at Moundville, Alabama, at a museum, at the Jones Museum, which is one of the best in the country for Native American mounds, they have a display, three-dimensional display, called the Portal to the Starry Path. And it tells about the soul's journey. So, here are the key elements. The free soul can only make the leap to the stars when Orion's nebula, which is Messier 42, is about to sink below the horizon in the early morning, and Scorpius could not be visible. Now, something I've never talked to Andrew about, never really explained anywhere else, is why, okay, so the free soul, let's pretend this is the horizon. I'll get over here where everybody can see it. Here's the horizon, and you have that hand, Orion, sinking, and it's in the early morning hours, and you had to jump right when it got to the edge, and then it would go ahead and sink. Because in that night, you'd see Orion in the east, and early at night, and then it would go across the sky, and right before the sun rose the next day, it would sink into the west. Why is that the case? Well, here's why. They believed that spiritual energy, souls, and these weird spirits that they would manifest could only move in a straight line, and could only move in a straight line across Earth. That's why the walls of earth that they often built for a lot of these geometric earthworks would only be 5 or 6 feet tall. They didn't need to make them all 20 feet tall. They did make some of them that tall to keep people out. But they believed that the spirit would follow the edge of the earth. When it hit a wall, it would ping off. It couldn't get out. It was trapped. So, here's the deal. Your soul is being released, and it has to go straight. It has to go straight to the horizon on the earth. That's why it had to go right as Orion was sinking. Simple. I hear people making strange noises over here. I don't know what it is. All right. During the Mound Builder era, these 5,000 years, the only time these elements were present, the elements being can't see Scorpius, and Orion has to sink just before sunrise into the west, it's at the winter solstice. It's when it had to be. Now, what happened then, as you know, when Orion went down, then in the morning, the sun rose, it was daytime, and what was happening, what they knew was happening is the soul was tucked away in that ogie, that slit, and it could make a journey through the underworld, made it all the way through the underworld safely. The next night, it came up on the opposite horizon, then it would hop out of that ogie onto the path of souls, and then it would make the journey to the north on the Milky Way, eventually reaching that Judge and the Great Eagle, and if it passed muster, it was allowed to go through another portal to the other world. That, in essence, is the starry path and the soul's journey. So how do we know that these things, that these sites were used for this ritual? Well, through archaeoastronomy. For some 400 years, people have tried to figure out why the heck are these mounds arranged the way they are. I mean, you have all these bizarre configurations of earthworks. You have mounds, hundreds of mounds at some sites. And in 1987, here in Arkansas, they studied 30 different mounds. And they were trying to find what are the stars that align with mounds. But the problem they had is, we don't know about precision. When I first started doing this research, Andrew got an email from a guy in England who said, I want to have the exact precise alignments that Little's talking about here. And it's like, are you talking about 270.3 on an azimuth? And because in England, when they are looking at something like the rising of the setting of the sun at the solstice at Stonehenge, they have a stone that comes to a point, and they can just sit right there, and look at that stone, and it's very precise. We're not talking about that here in America. What we're talking about is a mound, a large formation that had a temple on the top, because they were looking from one mound across another, and there are no exact, precise alignments, and there's a reason why they didn't have those. But even back then in 1987, they said, well, we don't know what precision means to them. They probably have a different concept of it. And the other thing in 1987 they didn't know, we don't even know what to look for. We don't know what time of the year matters, and we don't know what stars matter. I mean, if you use a star program and you have some alignment and you watch it for 365 days, you are likely to see 300 or 400 different stars that set in that exact site. You'll see, so you don't know what, they didn't know what to look for. So in 2002, with the development of this idea of the path of souls, suddenly we know what to look for. And what do we look for? Well, here's an example of a site. This is a reconstruction of a site in Florida called Bottle Creek. For example, you have a kind of a central mound here. Let's say you stood here and you wanted to know what would line up if I looked from the top of this mound across that mound and out to the horizon. What would be there? Or what would be from this mound to that mound out to horizon, and so on. There's almost too many alignments on this one that are possible. But without the path of souls, knowing what stars to look for and what time of year that we're going to look, how could you even start here? It's very difficult. That's the trouble that the Archaeological Survey here in Arkansas had. And a site like this is a typical earthwork. It really exists. It's in Ohio. And you have these openings. See, these openings were always curious. They knew that they had something to do with stars, the sun and the moon. These are mounds. This is a square that's 27 acres. So we're looking at something enormous here. So maybe if you stood here and you looked through there and on the horizon, you'd see something that mattered. But how would you know without the path of souls idea? Modern technology. New computer programs allow us to go back in time, the best of the best, go back in time pretty much the hundreds of thousands of years. So I can easily see the stars in the past with a program called Starry Night Pro. You need the GPS, the precise GPS, which I got from maps that archaeologists did. I got from Google Earth, and I also went to sites and we got GPS there. So you know exactly what to plug into the STAR program. Yeah, you can also use Google Earth for things, and then in case there was a horizon out there that was elevated because of mountains or something else that was in the distance, there's a thing called the cross azimuth calculator. And it allows you to find the azimuth based on whatever the horizon's altitude is. So basically, you're starting at this point, maybe you're on a mound, and then these programs will allow you to look at every degree at any particular time and see what's happening in the sky. I wish we could have done this in the 80s, but none of this existed then. So this is an example of seeing a star in the sky. Complicated, but not worth going into. One of the sites, I looked at almost all the sites the Arkansas Archaeological Survey looked at. I'll get to some of those in a minute. But I decided to start in relatively simple ones. And so this is Fairfield Earthworks in Ohio. These walls, these are walls of earth, walls. All right? It's an area of 13 acres. These walls are 50 feet wide. 50-foot wide wall of earth. And they're only about 5 feet high. The length of this wall is 600 feet. All right? That is a large mound. That's a burial mound. And these are two stone burial mounds south of it. You see there's a very weird sort of opening here and another burial mound in the center. And there's actually a moat on the outside of this very strange opening. And there's water. So using all of those programs that I just showed you, going back to the time this site was used, roughly 500 BC, looking at the winter solstice, if you stood at this opening and looked directly across this mound, you would see the winter solstice sunset. And then if you stood at this little point and you looked directly across this corner, you'd see Orion rising after the sunset. Then if you stood at this point and looked directly across that mound out, you see Cygnus or Deneb setting about midnight. And then you'd go to this point, here, and look across and you'd see Orion setting. May not seem impressive, but that's the same thing archaeologists have done at these sites. And I'll show you one that they did in a minute, with these corners and the openings across mounds. So the key elements that I looked at over and over and over. I wanted to see the solstice sunset on the winter. Did it match? I wanted to see the rising of Orion. Was there a way to point that out? I wanted to see the setting of Cygnus. There's a reason why. And I wanted to see the setting of Orion. Again and again, I did loads and loads of these sites. Here's another one in Ohio. Same basic elements popped up. Winter solstice sunset from this opening across this mound, burial mound. And there's an opening there, but the line's drawn through the opening, one of these. You'd see the sunset. Second thing, you'd see Orion rising from the top of that mound through the opening. You'd see Cygnus setting from the top of this mound across a burial mound. And then you'd see the setting of Orion from this burial mound through a gap in these two. Again and again. So they would be performing a ritual here, which hopefully can show you sort of what it looks like when they send the soul out. Another site, this is from Cochrane, 1992. So I want to show you this large, odd square with this weird little formation. And you have the winter solstice sunset they found. They also found the summer solstice sunrise. That is from them. I went and reanalyzed theirs, and I found they're correct in all of them. Their winter solstice sunset goes directly over this massive burial mound that had hundreds and hundreds of cremations in it. Straight across this corner, you see Orion rising then from the top of this mound out that gap, that opening. You see the setting of Deneb or Cygnus from there directly through the corner, and then Orion setting from this corner directly out this bizarre gap that remains a little unexplainable. Another site in Ohio, that one's too complicated, doesn't exist anymore. There's a gravel company there. This is one that's in Mississippi, at Winterville, Mississippi, near Greenville. And this central mound, there's 24 mounds there. This is one that the Arkansas Archaeological Survey did. That's why I have it here. This central mound is that one. And that is Laura right there. That shows you the size of it. Laura standing right there. And this is an old survey of it. Again, same thing. Orion seen, winter solstice sunset. Orion falls, Cygnus falls, over and over. This pops up again and again. And I'm showing you this for a couple reasons. One, I'll show you the alignments at Angel Mounds in Evansville. But all these flat-top mounds had temples on top of them. And this is a reconstructed temple at Angel Mounds. And so if you were on a mound, you might see the sun come down and set right behind that temple. So that's why precise angles, you see the amount of space you have here. And the reason they did this is because they couldn't necessarily hold the ritual on the night of the winter solstice because they needed to have a clear sky. So they needed a window time frame. They needed, and there is actually a time frame of about a month, plus or minus a month, that they could have done this ritual. It's just the winter solstice is the center point. That mound I showed you is this one at Angel. This map is rotated, so north's at the bottom and west is over here. But all the alignments are there. The sunset from that mound, the central mound directly across this one. Orion seen directly across this little mound in that corner of the wall. And then Cygnus setting and the setting of Orion. Again and again. And the big one, Moundville, Alabama, where this ritual was really proven. This main mound in the center, Graham showed you this yesterday too. There's 20 platform mounds. There, all arranged around 326 acres. And that central mound is Mound A, and that's what it looks like from the top of another mound. That was the Shaman's Mound. So this gives you a good idea. You stand here in this mound and you can look out across this horizon. Now, I told you earlier that they love to burn trees to the ground. This is a good example. They wanted to be able to see the horizon for several reasons, not just to see the stars. But the horizon was flat. But there would have been a temple atop this mound and all of these, and all these are relevant. So all the sightings at Moundville were done from this central mound. There's Mound A. The first one we'll look at is Orion Rising, because these two are together at the end, but Orion Rising. So you'd stand there and you'd see it directly above this mound. We took this from, this picture is from that spot at Moundville. Then next we go to 2, Cygnus and Deneb setting from this mound to that one. There it is, it's this mound. Then these two are close together because they're both toward the west. The winter solstice sunset is this one, and Orion setting is that one. There they are. There's the winter solstice sunset. There's Orion setting. So the same alignments come up again and again and again. The ritual started in the morning of the winter solstice sunset after the shaman decided this is the day. The chief would come out. He would welcome the sun. When the sun set, the ceremonies really started. And the sun would set through a gap or at the top of a mound. The people would be ready. They would have had the bonfires set up and ready to burn, but they wouldn't do it till the nighttime. An example of how it might have looked at one of the sites, you'd see the great eagle setting here into a corner across the mound. This is one that I actually showed you, the alignment I had these made. Fire, this is also a video, but it's not going to run on this. I have it in Mac. The whole ritual is this. I'm going to see my time again. What do I have left? 10 minutes? 5 minutes, okay. They would have set a date. They would have gathered the remains. They would have got the wood, honored the sun, dancing, music, feasting. The elite were put in special tombs. Don't have time for that. They'd honor the setting sun, have a fire. They'd honor the first sight of the hand, acknowledge the great eagle. They'd begin some frenzied rituals. They'd then set up a special table or an altar. Here is one. This is one that Graham showed you yesterday. Oops, I dropped it. This is a replica, obviously. And it's the hand, the iron hand on this. For about 100 years, they had no idea what these were. There's about a dozen of them. These were tables. They brought them out. They'd set them up. They'd put these artifacts on top, such as this. There's the hand and the bone. This is the life soul going into a mound. And there's the hand. Notice it's above the ground. All of these contained special drinks. That's one of these objects. They used hallucinogenics. I hate even talking about this. You know, I'm in my field is criminal psychology, but they used hallucinogenics. We know that they used stimulants in this ceremony, mainly for the people who had the dead, and they did this basically right before Orion sank, and the people saw the souls going. But that's what these were for. That's only been known for the past 10 years or so. Very close to the end, an example of the hand sinking. Where did it all come from? Well, Deneb served as the North Pole Star some 18,000 years ago, 16 to 18,000 years ago. That's how, if you do time-lapse photography, that's how it looks. I'll skip that. I did some Starry Night pros in Turkey near Göbekli Tepe. This is one, and it shows, you probably can't see it well, but it shows Cygnus as the North Pole Star. The Milky Way is straight up. This idea of, and then here's the south, there's Orion. So 18,000 years ago when Cygnus served as the North Pole, Orion was due south. Remember I told you everything goes from south to north. It's like taking a multi-city trip. Andrew Collins came from England to Little Rock, But Andrew had to first go to London, then he took a plane to Atlanta, he took a plane to Memphis, he drove with us here to Little Rock. Stop after stop after stop. That's the way the death journey is. The first stop on it is Orion. All secret knowledge, not known until recent years, but it's about to revolutionize everything. If I have another minute, I'll take any questions. Do I have a minute, or am I done? I'll let where are we at, time-wise? Yeah. How did we find out what the last 10 years? Part of it is they have found artifacts that show some hallucinogenic mushrooms. Amanita is one that they found. Artifacts that actually that looked exactly like an Amanita muscaria mushroom. And not just that, but they've analyzed some of the substances inside of these ritual vessels. It's only been recent years that they could even do that. And it's because they can't dig into mounds anymore. They needed something to do. Sir? Orientations are this. I did it at Malta. I haven't gotten to the end of this. This all started probably 18,000 years ago. How it got here, maybe Siberians, maybe they did it themselves, but it appears to be everywhere. I think it was at Göbekli Tepe. Andrew's correct. I know it was in Malta because I ran all these same calculations at the temples, the Gozo temples in Malta. It's all identical. The same alignments are again and again everywhere. Yes, ma'am.
What did they believe the soul was doing, like if you died 3 days after the winter solstice?
They stored your remains. This is something that's weirded people out. They often would take the remains of the deceased. If you died at the wrong time of the year, they bundled you up and you were put in the floor underground in your house. And they stored the remains, and they brought everybody together for these big ceremonies. But remember, you were obligated to. All this is, you're obligated, and that's how it's believed they controlled everything. They controlled life and death, what happens to your ancestors, what happens to your descendants and you. It was all controlled by how well you did these things, and people believed it. So they invested time and energy to do it all. Thank you.
I was a highwayman. Along the coach roads I did ride, with sword and pistol by my side. Many a young maid lost her baubles to my trade. Many a soldier shed his lifeblood on my blade. The bastards hung me in the spring of 25, but I am still alive.
I was a sailor, I was born upon the tide. With the sea I did abide. I sailed a schooner around the Horn of Mexico. I went aloft to furl the mainsail in a blow. And when the yards broke off, they said that I got killed. But I'm living still. I was a dam builder across a river deep and wide, where steel and water did collide. A place called Boulder on the wild Colorado. I slipped and fell into the wet concrete below. They buried me in that gray tomb that knows no sound. but I am still around. I'll always be around, around, and around, and around, and around. I fly a starship across the universe divide, and when I reach the other side, I'll find a place to rest my spirit if I can. Perhaps I may become a highwayman again, or I may simply be a single drop of rain, but I will remain. I'll be back again and again and again and again and again and again.
Put on my blue suede shoes and I boarded the plane. Touched down in the land of the Delta Blues, in the middle of the pouring rain. WC Handy, won't you look down over me? Yeah, I got a first class ticket, but I'm as blue as a boy can be. Then I'm walking in Memphis, was walking with my feet 10 feet off a beam. Walking in Memphis, but do I really feel the way I feel? Saw the ghost of Elvis on Union Avenue, followed him up to the gates of Graceland, and I watched him walk right through. Now security, they did not see him, they just hovered round his tomb. But there's a pretty little thing waiting for the king down in the jungle room. When I was walking in Memphis, I was walking with my feet 10 feet off a beam. Walking in Memphis, but do I really feel the way I feel? They've got catfish on the table, they've got gospel in the air, and Reverend Green, be glad to see you when you haven't got a prayer. But boy, you got a prayer in Memphis. Now Muriel plays piano every Friday at the Hollywood, and they brought me down to see her, and they asked me if I would do a little number, and I sang with all my might. She said, tell me, are you a Christian child? And I said, ma'am, I am tonight. Walking in Memphis, was walking with my feet 10 feet off a beam. Walking in Memphis, but do I really feel the way I feel? Walking in Memphis, I was walking with my feet 10 feet off a beam. Walking in Memphis, but do I really feel the way I feel? Put on my blue suede shoes and I boarded the plane. Touched down in the land of the Delta Blues, in the middle of the pouring rain. Touched down in the land of the Delta Blues, in the middle of the pouring rain. Wise men say only fools rush in, but I can't help falling in love with you. Shall I stay? Would it be a sin if I can't help falling in love with you? Like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be. Take my hand, take my whole life too, for I can't help falling in love with you. Like a river flows surely to the sea, darling, so it goes. Some things are meant to be.